All right, now we're starting the reassembly on this '06 Silverado 1500. I'm going to capture this for you. All right, now, so my lower control arms are in. So I'm beginning the process of reassembly now with the lower control arm. Now, I do want to point out to you a couple things right off the bat. First off, when you're putting this back together, one way to be sure that you've got the right position, because we're on the passenger side, is look at your sway bar. Now, you've got to have that lined up because you're going to put that end sway link in there. So you need to make sure you see that cutout there. This should be an exact match. So check, here's your two shock connecting points here, so you know they're lined up. You see your bump stop here. Now also something very important. The bolts that go back in, there are two different sizes. The longer bolt will always be over here because this is the thicker arm than this one. Now these do have red thread locker, so I'm going to tap this in. Now I'm going to put red thread locker on these ultimately before they get torqued down. Now they do have a washer. Then you have a nut. Use the flat side here. I'm just going to spin it on for now because I'm going to come back and I'm going to need red thread locker, and I'm going to need to torque this down. Now that begins the process in of the lower control arm. Notice it has a castle nut. It will have a cotter pin. Fortunately, on the upgrade, these are going to be a lot easier to replace in the future because these are bolt-on versus the old pressed in that you'd have to drill out. So again, the lower control arm. All right, so that's all it is to basically reinstalling a lower control arm on an '06 Chevy 1500. This is the 5.3 liter V8 engine. Now, again, I told you in an earlier video, the torque settings on these, once you have the red thread locker on these, then we'll have to torque them down. And so I'll come back and do that. And I'll post in the comments, again, the torque settings. Okay, now I'm on the driver's side. And once again, I'm starting with reinstallation or installation of this new lower control arm, and I just want to point out a couple of things to you again so you don't forget. There is a smaller arm and a larger arm. The bolt sizes are different. Use the longer bolt arm on this wider arm. Make sure that you look at the orientation in which you took them off and you put them back on. Notice the nut is on this side, on this side. They're different, so pay attention to what you're doing. So I have now taken this new lower control arm, inserted it, ran the nut through, the bolt through. I've not torqued or tightened it because it does require red thread locker. And I believe these are 129 foot-pounds of pressure they're going to need. Now notice this comes, it has a, the ball joint's already intact. It has a castle nut, a cotter pin. Fortunately, on the upgrade, these are bolt-on now instead of having to drill them out, those pressed in. You'll know the orientation is right because your bump stop hits here, your spring sits here. Make sure that your end link will line up with your sway bar. That's how you know you've got the orientation correct. Your ball joint in the lower is sitting down. Your knuckle will attach to the bottom and the top. That's all it is to it. So, and then like I said, I'll put red thread locker and I'll torque them down here shortly. But we're going to take this on a step process. So that's all it is to installing a new lower control arm. These two are for your shock that gets slid up from the bottom, and the two bolts at the bottom there. The spring sits here, and you'll see all that on separate videos.